Hello, I'm Alien Evolution, and this video is on the speculative evolution of the Bigfoot. As you probably already know, the Bigfoot or Sasquatch is a cryptid that resembles a tall bipedal ape, rumored to live in North America. I personally doubt such a large animal could actually exist undetected in such close proximity to humans. But if Bigfoot were real, how would it have evolved? My plan for this video is for us to take a look at the Gigantopithecus theory, give a brief explanation on the evolution of bipedalism, and perform an exercise in speculative evolution by theorizing on how Bigfoot could have evolved, and what traits we can deduce it might have. Before we continue, I'd like to remind you to consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. While you're there, consider smashing that like button and leave a comment. Anyway, let's get back to the video. Before we speculate on how Bigfoot evolved, we should quantify what a Bigfoot is. Traditionally, the Bigfoot or Sasquatch is a North American primate that resembles a tall human covered in a dark, thick hair. It can also be described as a large, fully bipedal ape. If Bigfoot were real, it would be extremely reclusive and averse to interactions with humans. It's also probably less intelligent than humans, incapable of tool use beyond throwing rocks or hitting trees to make its famous wood-knocking sound. There's a popular theory which we should probably take a look at that says the true identity of Bigfoot is the massive extinct ape, Gigantopithecus. This herbivore lived in southern China for about 6 to 9 million years, until it went extinct about 100,000 years ago, at the beginning of the last Pleistocene Ice Age. As the largest known hominid, it's estimated to have weighed 400 to 700 pounds, and would have reached 9 feet while standing upright. Speaking of which, whether it did walk upright may be the crucial factor in determining whether it's a likely candidate for Bigfoot. Here's something I found with a little bit of digging. Gigantopithecus' method of locomotion is uncertain, as no pelvic bones have been found. The dominant view is that it walked on all fours like modern gorillas and chimpanzees. However, a minority opinion favors bipedal locomotion. This was most notably championed by the late Grover Krantz, but this assumption is based only on the few jawbone remains found, all of which are U-shaped and widened towards the rear. This allows room for the windpipe to be within the jaw, allowing the skull to sit squarely on a fully erect spine as in modern humans, rather than roughly in front of it, as in the other great apes. The majority view is that the weight of such a large, heavy animal would put enormous stress on the creature's limbs, ankles, and feet if it walked bipedally, while if it walked on all four limbs, like gorillas, its weight would be better distributed over each limb. The evolution of these creatures does little to make things certain either. Gigantopithecus' closest living relative is the orangutan, which doesn't walk bipedally but doesn't usually knuckle walk either, spending most of its time in the trees. Considering how similarly Bigfoot move and look to humans, and the lack of evidence that Gigantopithecus convergently evolved something similar, it seems likely that Gigantopithecus was not the ancestor of Bigfoot. Of course, if a complete Gigantopithecus skeleton is ever found, it could shine new light on the situation. We can rarely be certain of the past, and I'm certainly no expert myself. So what is its ancestor, then? Before we speculate on that, let me fill you in on the evolution of bipedalism, arguably one of the most notable traits of the Bigfoot. The March of Progress is a famous or infamous image depicting knuckle-walking apes evolving into bipedal humans. However, there's a growing theory that states humanity did not evolve from knuckle-walkers. Fossil evidence seems to support early hominids moving similarly to gibbons while on the ground, with gorillas and chimpanzees evolving knuckle-walking twice independently when they split off from our ancestors. Gorillas and chimps even knuckle-walk differently from each other. Then, species like Australopithecus took their adaptations for bipedalism further, as they adapted for moving on the ground. I got a lot of this from a fantastic video by Stefan Milo. The video is relatively short and describes the theory and its evidence better than I can. I'll be leaving a link to it in the description, which I highly suggest you watch. With this information in mind, Bigfoot would probably have evolved from a cousin of existing great apes or a lineage of bipedal hominids, but not from chimps or gorillas. Considering that Bigfoot appear to walk very similarly to humans, perhaps the simplest and most logical ancestor would be an early species of bipedal hominid. This would begin Bigfoot's journey in Africa. 3 million years ago, Africa was a little greener than today, with more forests and trees. Perhaps due to a thinning of these trees, human ancestors like Australopithecus started transitioning to a lifestyle on the ground, with lower bodies adapted to walking long distances. While clever, these apes were only using simple tools and probably didn't have fire, evidenced by their thick jawbones for chewing. Perhaps one group of Australopithecus did not evolve to rely so heavily on tools or cooperation like our ancestors, adapting larger body sizes to help them hunt and avoid predators instead. We know Bigfoot left Africa at some point, since it lives in North America, so perhaps that migration occurred pretty early. While human ancestors like Homo erectus wouldn't be leaving Africa for another million years or so, perhaps some of these tall Australopithecus populations traveled into Europe or Asia, adapting further to larger body sizes and retaining their hair to combat colder climates. Over the next few million years, these Australopithecus would start resembling modern Sasquatch, and produce a number of populations distributed throughout Eurasia. After some time, they'd also be likely to encounter species such as Gigantopithecus, and our ancestors as Homo erectus and later populations of humans migrate out of Africa. Humans actually interbred with Neanderthals, with all non-African populations having small amounts of Neanderthal DNA, and with at least one other human species called the Denisovans. Considering that there isn't much or any Bigfoot DNA in human populations, perhaps Bigfoot were already reclusive enough to avoid reproducing with humans, or maybe they weren't capable of producing hybrids that could have offspring of their own. Whatever the case, the relationship between Homo sapiens and early Bigfoot probably wasn't cooperation or friendship. We know Bigfoot has to reach North America. About 30 to 13,000 years ago, a population of humans crossed a land bridge called Beringia, formed by the lower sea levels of the Ice Age. Perhaps they were accompanied by Sasquatch, which at this point would look relatively similar to how they look in the modern day. These Sasquatch would likely stick to the colder regions of North America, having adapted for northern Asia. So Bigfoot evolved from a population of Australopithecus, which might have left Africa earlier than humans, produced a number of clades in Eurasia, and migrated parallel to us across the land bridge to North America. Probably. If you want to use this in a project of your own, go ahead, and if you have any other theories on how Bigfoot could have evolved, post them in the comments. With that out of the way, there might be some physical traits of the Sasquatch we can determine by eyewitness testimony and speculating from its niche and evolution. For example, sexual dimorphism is the difference between sexes in a species. Gorillas show very high sexual dimorphism, with big silverbacks fighting for mating rights and groups of females. Humans, on the other hand, show relatively low sexual dimorphism, which also ties into male humans being pretty involved in raising offspring. There aren't any accounts I'm aware of where Bigfoot travel in large groups, but families of Bigfoot aren't an uncommon trope. Perhaps Sasquatch would have relatively low sexual dimorphism, although they are sometimes said to have sagittal crests, a trait that appears in male orangutans and gorillas. Sagittal crests are used for greater muscle attachments in large male apes. While I was tempted to suggest sagittal crests might appear on male and female Bigfoot, since they have very muscular upper bodies and both sexes are pretty massive, connecting your arms to your scalp probably isn't necessary in a biped, so I'd question whether sagittal crests would exist at all in Bigfoot. Speaking of muscular upper bodies, one analysis of the original Bigfoot video claimed that it turned its upper body to look at the camera, which is in line with the fact that Bigfoot are often considered to have no visible necks. Perhaps they do have upper bodies more similar to their climbing ancestors like Australopithecus, although the main use for such a trait I can imagine would be hunting, considering that Bigfoot probably doesn't do much climbing in trees. This could also be helpful in delivering powerful blows to trees, perhaps with a piece of wood, to produce their rumored wood-knocking sound. Presumably, Bigfoot is also nocturnal, with its dark fur used for camouflage. They might have sharp eyes to see in the dark, along with a good sense of smell for tracking down prey or locating other food, with a diet comparable to bears. Perhaps they use their wood knocking and calls to keep track of each other's location, whether it be for mating or territorial reasons, or perhaps to warn of humans. This could lead to them investing in a better sense of hearing than humans. They'd likely have higher intelligence than most apes, although they don't seem to even fashion rocks into simple tools, so they might not be as smart as something like Homo erectus. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know if you want more videos on cryptid evolution. I'd appreciate if you considered subscribing and checking out my Patreon if you're in a position to do so, although watching these videos is certainly enough. If you'd like to see a video speculating further on Bigfoot anatomy and behaviors, along with some details on what ecological pressures could have shaped it into its modern form, let me know in the comments. Anyway, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.